just to mention just a few, that this bill has got a provision then that extends the protection now. Initially or currently, the protection is focusing on children and persons with mental disabilities, but now this bill seeks to extend it to all victims of sexual offenses. It is a bill then that places then a responsibility on employers to ensure that they vet the existing employees and also the employees that are coming into the system, those who will be providing services directly to children and persons with mental disabilities. And also the existing, that is the principal act, also in section 45, subsection 3, also then states that so as to ensure that we don't have people at service points that provide services to children and persons with mental disabilities that are already registered in the NRSO. So subsection 3 then says that any employer who fails to comply with any of these provisions is guilty of an offense and is liable on conviction of a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 7 years, or both a fine or such imprisonment. So what it means is that if an employer then does—
Advocate, I'm giving you 4 minutes to wrap up.
Okay,
4
thank you,
minutes
Chairperson.
to wrap up, yes.
If an employer does not divert an existing employee or any person who's entering into the employment, into the labor field, then will be charged, will be charged and will be liable to a fine or to an imprisonment sentence. So if you can take me to the next slide. Now, in the next one. So we have then the same provision, that is the criminal law and the Criminal Law and Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act. It also then develops a committee which is led by the DG of Justice. And this is the committee then that's got a number of DGs. And the responsibility of this committee is to ensure that then this legislation is implemented at national and provincial and also local level. And then it is a committee that reports then to the Minister of Justice, and the Minister of Justice then has an obligation in terms of this legislation of submitting then the annual report to Parliament of the performance of the different departments. And even now we are in the process of having those annual reports tabled in Parliament. And as you see, Chairperson, then it's a number of different committees that are chaired by the Department of Justice, so as to ensure that there is accountability and coordination in all matters that relate to the implementation of the NSP. If you can take me to the next slide, which I think that is going to be the last one. So these then are the departments that are participating in all these structures. Take me to the next slide. Now, as required by Pillar 1, Pillar 1 also requires then all the stakeholders to engage then in 365 days campaign. And the department then in 2021 did the same within the constraints of the COVID-19 restrictions. Then we had a 71 GBVF public education interventions on multiple media platforms. That is, we use also our Let's Talk Justice radio talk show, which is aired over 80 community radio stations. And also we held then different initiatives, and also the webinars that we were also holding for Pillar 3 committee. And these were the webinars that were coordinated by the department for the different stakeholders that form part of Pillar 3 of the NSP. If you can take me to the next slide. I would also like to just to say that as a department, then to ensure that there is gender employment parity, we are in the process then of increasing then our percentage, because currently our women who are in the department at SMS level, we are standing at, our compliance stands at 47%. And we also have then the gender focal point, which is placed at the DG's office, that is responsible then for gender mainstreaming in the department. So we're in the process then of increasing that percentage to 50% as required. So what I can say then, Chairperson, is that the department, in my closure, is to say that the department is moving forward then with the introduction of legislation and also the development of policies that promote the principles of accountability, leadership, and coordination. And now we are in the process then of developing the regulations for the Domestic Violence Act. We are also in the process then of developing the online solution for the applications of the protection for the applications for protection orders, so as to ensure that everybody then is able then to access the services, and we are able then to take the responsibility of making those applications even for the complainants and using the facilities and the online facilities. So that is what we are aiming at doing then in year 2 of the implementation of pillar 2. We are also then in the process then of also developing then the national policy framework for sexual offenses that is also going to be promoting then the principles of accountability at all levels of the implementation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Advocate Kambule. Public Service and Administration, I've seen the DM is there and the DG. Over to you, DM.
Thank you, Chair. Let me continue also to welcome the introductory part made for this meeting, to say that gender-based violence and femicide continues to be a debilitating factor in terms of upliftment of the status of women in South Africa, including sexual harassment. The message from the Minister is that the Department of Public Service and Administration continues to be committed to our mandate in terms of the National Strategic Plan, Gender-based Violence and Femicide, that has been put in place. We are responsible for 3 pillars. Currently, we are just putting focus on the pillar number 1, that is accountability, coordination, and leadership. That actually takes into consideration key interventions, key activities, and indicators. We continue to believe that we can be, as a country, as a government, manage to deal with this scourge successfully, especially if we can manage to finally have proper coordination of all kinds of activities that are actually done across the board, taking into consideration that the structures also needs to be strong, and we appreciate the effort that the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities actually putting into training of the structures that are supposed to actually become an implementation mechanism of this program. I'm going to, through you, Chairperson, ask DDG, Mr. Cornelius, Marcel Cornelius, to actually take us through the presentation from the Department of Public Service and Administration. I thank you.
Thank you, GM.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and Deputy Minister and honorable members of the committee. Can you hear me, Chairperson?
Yes, you've got 15
Thank you.
minutes to present.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, on the call that's been made to be succinct, I'll not dwell on the slides. That's more or less a duplication of the previous slides. I would just also like to indicate that my colleagues from the department is here, Florence Maleka and also Fanani Manugu, that will be assisting as well. So, Chair, yeah, this first slide is just the outline of the presentation. We're going to briefly look at the purpose and introduction. I don't need to say much about Pillar 1 because I think everybody is familiar with it. Some background information. Then the main 3 bullets, I think, is the establishment of the mechanisms and processes to hold state and societal leadership accountable for taking a firm stand against gender-based violence and femicide. And then the challenges that hamper progress and steps that we're taking to mitigate these. Next slide, please. Chair, on the purpose and introduction, I think it suffices to say that we talking here and reflecting on the establishment of mechanisms and processes to hold the state and societal leadership accountable for taking a firm stand against gender-based violence and femicide, and also to reflect on the challenges. I think suffice to say that I think everybody is aware that the public service is the biggest employer in the country and therefore has a huge responsibility to provide a workplace that's free from any form of violence. Also, Deputy Minister has indicated that we're engaging on 3 of the 6 pillars, so I'm not going to go into that detail then. The next slide, please. Here, I'm also not going to go into detail, but just to say that everybody is aware of the key interventions that we're looking at strengthening leadership and then the activities. And later on in the slide, I'll also reflect on the indicators and specifically the percentage of workplaces that have sexual harassment policies in place. So I would like to see the next slide then, please. Jay, here just to stand still a little bit, the background is the public service as a workplace is obligated to provide a safe and healthy and amicable working environment. I think that is true for all organizations, but therefore it shall not permit nor condone sexual harassment. Also, in line with that, the DPSA created a gender equality strategic framework for the public service, which provide a wide set of options for transformation of the workplace. So it gives direction to the rest of the government. Also, further to that, departments are required to plan and report on organizational support in order to promote women's empowerment and gender equality. And in addition to the DPSA Gender Equality Strategic Framework, we've also developed a policy and procedure on the management of sexual harassment in the public service in order to promote a workplace that's free of sexual harassment, sexual favors, intimidation, and victimization. This policy and procedure also provides a systematic and consistent approach to managing sexual harassment and steps to be taken when sexual harassment occurs. So departments are thus required to annually report to the DPSA on the number of cases that's been reported and resolved amongst other information, and we'll reflect on that a little bit more as well. Next slide, please. The mechanisms
recording in progress.
The mechanisms and processes to hold the state and societal leadership accountable. We argue that sexual harassment is a form of gender-based violence and therefore is prohibited, whether it's based on the grounds of sex, gender, and or sexual orientation. DPSA is also responsible for the monitoring of the public service and the institutions within the public service. And then the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disability is responsible to monitor all sectors. Subsequent to the 2018 summit, DPSA has made efforts to improve the implementation of the existing policies and strategies in order to eliminate gender-based violence and femicide. Also, we focused on the evidence-based approach for the allocation of resources and also to help identify how challenges should be addressed and successfully replicated. Chair, I'm sure everybody and the members is also aware that monitoring and evaluation is a very complex and time-consuming process, and therefore the impact evaluation is a very difficult matter to deal with. We are currently very busy with the monitoring and see the day-to-day progress, and that's progressing well. And we've also now developed an electronic system and tools that reduce the burden of collation, analysis, and feedback. So that improves the quality of the reports that we have up to date as well. Next slide, please. Chair, this slide is just the indication of how many departments. So it's a number of departments that submitted reports over the years. You can see from 2015, there was a steady increase, but we've had last year, 2020, most probably due to the COVID pandemic, our worst year. We've managed to turn it around a little bit. And in 2021, we're now having 74 departments that submitted the report. Still not good enough, and we're working on that as far as we go. The next slide, please. I think this is important. Report back on the indicator, as I indicated in the beginning, a percentage of workplaces that have sexual harassment policies in place. I think important to note that all departments have either have drafts or approved policies, and 90% of those are aligned to the policy and procedure on management of sexual harassment that the DPSA has issued. 35 sensitivity sessions were conducted, and it was attended by around about 12, almost 13,000 officials. And the information is available on the disaggregation of that by salary levels, race, age, and gender. 33 departments reported that they have appointed sexual harassment advisors as required by the department, and 40 cases, new cases, were reported by departments, whilst 19 of the cases were carried over from the previous year and were not resolved yet. And the DPSA continued to try to educate and raise awareness, and there's some of the initiatives that we've undertaken there in collaboration with the NSG. Chair, in line with the call for time, I'm not going to go through all these figures because I think the presentations are available. Suffice to say that the NSG is also working with the Department of Youth and Persons with Disability and rolling out various initiatives there. 8 training sessions have been rolled out and was attended by over 200 participants. In August, I think this is also where we're going in future, is we hosted many webinars, a webinar, and we're thinking of hosting more for the public service and to make people aware of that. And then we're also participating in the webinars that the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disability are presenting. Next slide, please. This is just a pledge that our previous Deputy Minister has, in line with the ILO Convention 119, made. I'm not going to go into the detail there, but it's basically saying that the whole intervention, the ILO Convention and the recommendations thereof is supported. And next slide, please. Yeah, I think this is the important slides that we need to reflect on a little bit. Some of the challenges that we're experiencing that's hampering progress. I think the poor submission rate of reports by departments that could have been seen in the previous slide, where the statistics that we projected, that is difficult, and it creates the inconsistent submission of reports hamper that we do comparative analysis of departments with each other. So that's one of the matters that we really need to address. The number of officials that underwent the sensitivity training, if we do look at the disaggregation of that information, we find that it's most of the attendance is at a low level, salary level 8 and below, and there's very few managers that's actually attending these meetings. It also shows that very few white and Indian officials attend the sessions, and we need to look at how we can turn that around. Also, a number of cases reported. It's very low in our estimation, and we're trying to get more information and to increase the reporting of the number of cases so that officials will relate the incidents of sexual harassment. If we look at the PERSAL system, that's the personnel salary administration system, there is a provision for capturing of cases of sexual harassment. And you see that on PERSAL, there is cases reported, but yet but when you talk to people, they say they have no cases there. Sorry, just one back. Yes, there we go. Department of Education in all 9 provinces has got the highest number of cases reported. I think it's a function also of having all the departments, the most employees there. And yes, the number of disciplinary cases rising from the sexual harassment on PERSAL, I've touched on that, sorry. The number of cases are resolved. It's also very low, and it takes a long period of time to resolve these matters. Problems that hinder the conclusion of cases, the lack of cooperation of victims, witnesses and perpetrators, the unavailability of presiding officers and so forth creates those problems as well. And then very few people report sexual harassment for the fear of victimization and retaliation. Next slide, please. Right, here I think the planned interventions, we've mentioned that not all departments are compliant, and letters have been sent to these departments for non-compliance, and we are asking reasons for non-compliance as well. We do realize that the sending of letters is not sufficient, but that's the start where we raise non-compliance with the departments and asking the reasons therefore. Where departments are struggling, we also render hands-on assistance and see how we can assist the departments from our side, from the DPSA side, to actually make sure that there is compliance. And like I said, the inputs are currently being collated and documented to see what the effect is there at this stage. There's some new initiatives that we're also looking at. And in line with the ILO Convention 190, we are reviewing the policy and procedures on the management of sexual harassment in the public service to incorporate the issues raised there. We're also going to go and embark on a survey with regards to the sexual harassment in the public service in order to understand the problem better and to see what contributes to all that. And getting more data regarding sexual harassment through this survey. Then training and of heads of department, as I mentioned, there is a lack of the attendance of sensitivity training by the higher level staff members, and we actually then going to focus on heads of the department regarding training on sexual harassment policies and procedures. Also, we want to review the reporting mechanisms for sexual harassment cases. In this case, we're considering centralized and safe mechanisms to see how we can enhance that. And then partnerships is also something very important that we need to engage with and see how we can onboard some of partners within and outside of government to assist us with that. Chair, that is the presentation that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Thank you very much for sparing our time also. We're now proceeding. I'm going to call upon the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. I've seen the Honorable DM Tembing Kadimeng is here with us, and also the DG Williamson. Over to you, DM.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to my colleagues. I wouldn't waste much time, but we are ready as cooperative governance. I'll hand over to the DG to make the presentation. And we hope to engage with members if necessary at the end of the session. Thank you very much, Chairperson. DG, you can take over. DG?
DG, are you there?
She is connected.
I am connected and I am here. So good morning to the Honourable Chairperson and to all the members, and I greet all the ministers and deputy ministers. I'm here to then present the progress against Pillar 1 of the strategic plan. So really thank you for the opportunity, and the year 2021 marks almost 65 years since women had then marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria in defiance of the past laws and the demand for women's rights to be recognized. So we therefore need to intensify our fight for tougher gender-based violence awareness, and to also ensure that we have access to legal protections for women generally. We need to capitalize on our district development model, and this we intend to then utilize to be able to deal with this persistent challenge. So we have an external focus, if we could move to the next slide, in making sure that we do meet the requirements of Pillar 1. So we've aligned our plans within the department to those of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-based Violence. And of course, there are a number of areas, that become really important in this alignment. The first of those being the rollout of our national response through provinces and the local structures. The second one is that we've put mechanisms in place where through the state and societal leadership, we actually then hold them accountable, in terms of taking a firm stand against gender-based violence. We also have ensured that we have effective multi-sectoral coordination by our lead agency and collaboration, through the tiers within government. And we also then ensure that we want to drive the national framework on the municipal engagements with society organized, and then just fostering those partnerships so that in the response in our locally based structures, in particular, closer to the communities. Next slide, please. So localizing our response through the DDM approach, we have committed ourselves to ensuring that the DDM framework does contain a gender responsive indicators and targets. And then the DDM implementation framework was also developed to guide the whole of government and society in ensuring that there's a common approach in implementing the district development model.
DG?
And DCOG through our...
DG?
Yes?
Can you
Yes,
switch
Chair.
off your video if you don't have a problem? Because we are live now.
All right, thank you, Chair, I'll do so. Okay, so in localizing our response to the DDM approach, DCOG has also, through the annual performance plan, incorporated indicators and targets that are also based on the National Strategic Plan on Gender-based Violence and Femicide. And we are also working with the Department of Women and Youth and Persons with Disabilities, on the proposed indicators, as was also stated in the earlier presentation. So we also continue to engage the Commission for Gender Equality. We could move to the next slide. So the overall adoption, of the gender lens for us, we see as critical. And I think that it's also important that the partnership we do have with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, is not only continued, but that we then support each other, through the provincial workshops that we've also done with municipalities on mainstream of the gender-based violence issues into the municipalities, and just creating sensitization and awareness as we all roll out on our implementation through our workshops. The gender-based violence NSP is also a setting called forum, and also within our IGR structures that we've established, we also ensure that we monitor community participation. And the forums are also then held quarterly, and all provinces are then required to report on the implementation of the GBV activities by their municipalities. And we also want to ensure that we foster this alignment, and we do this by ensuring that there is support provided to the provinces to actually customize performance indicators that relate to the implementation of the National Strategic Plan. And and we also then ensure that we include this in our annual performance plans. Next slide, please. So in looking at multi-sectoral coordination, we, through 2 provinces, have supported the establishment of the new ward committees following the 2021 local government elections, and this is what we anticipate to do. And upon establishment, the ward committee members will be inducted on the prevention and response to gender-based violence incidents. And then just in Gauteng and Western Cape and in Mpumalanga provinces, they've already committed to include the GBV in their ward committee inductions and into their ward operational plans. And this will also be reported in 2022-23 financial year when the new wards are then constituted. So a key then feature as well in terms of the GovChat application that we have, that we launched on the 12th of March, is that we've already had 51 gender-based violence incidents that have been reported, and 9 of those actually related to domestic violence, and 50 requests for the GBV contact center have also come through, and there are 31 safe space ratings that have been made through our GovChat platform. Next slide, please. So in fostering our partnerships to actually respond to gender-based violence, we recently had a joint Caucus-UN extensive consultations in our 3 pilot districts. And of course, we are piloting the DDM through these 3 districts. It's Limpopo, Waterberg, eThekwini, and then OR Tambo. We have signed an agreement with UN Women, and part of the partnership then is that we are specifically looking at the implementation of 3 what we call interrelated pillars. And one of these speaks specifically to social transformation. And here we specifically look at increased stakeholder commitment and advocacy around gender-based violence and femicide. Of course, the other 2 are also unlocking the economic value chain and also looking at service delivery enhancement. But of course, for this presentation with the emphasis on the social transformation part of it. Can then move to the next slide. So there are a number of activities that are also being undertaken within every province. And of course, this we have done through our community work programs activities. And we can also then link that back to gender-based violence. So for instance, in the Eastern Cape, we have a football youth program, and the intention of this program is to really create awareness and to make sure that we realize about gender-based violence and how they actually need to refrain from such activities. Is also a targeted, this program also targets male youth who are also encouraged to refrain from abusive activities And we also, through the program, encourage and report, if such instances are indeed happening. So the football youth program also encourages youth to stay away from alcohol and drug abuse. And in the Eastern Cape in particular, this is really active, especially in Tabankulu, in the KSD area, Amatlatsi, and Muza Hill. And also under Enoch Gijima, through partnerships with the NGO Nohulunga under social development, we've also trained 50 participants on gender-based violence. In Limpopo, we also have the Football for Youth program. And of course, the program itself is taken to the broader community, where CWP participants and other community members also participate in sport. And of course, the same would apply where community members are encouraged to refrain from gender-based violence activities. We could then move to the next slide. In the Free State, we do also have some partnerships, specifically in Mangaung, where we look at addressing gender-based violence and child welfare. So it is with the TAWA, South Improvement, partnerships with the extended females who are participating or are being trained on. So it's really just, and then just recently on the 19th of August in the Wetsdorp, we commemorated Women's Month, and this was even appropriately named Beyond the Dent. I am a woman of infinite worth, and was aimed at encouraging women who might have had a tough time in life and had to bounce back to really remain resilient, consistent, and focused during their as they navigate the rough patches in life. So in Gauteng, we have the Survival Center. Here, a program is being run through Randfontein. This is a program that's led by a group of 15 female participants, and where they support and counsel victims of gender-based violence. And we also have connected with SAPS to actually identify victims and encourage them to open cases where they have actually been victims. If we could move to the next slide, please. Within the KZN, we have a community dialogue workshop on gender-based violence and equality that is scheduled for the 23rd of September in Umzimpulu in the Harry Gwala district. We have also 4 sites that will also then be participating and will be in attendance. And this event was also supported by stakeholders from the local community, inclusive of the councillors, the provincial actors, the Department of Communications, and then the municipality itself was actually key in organizing is key in organizing this workshop. So in partnership also with the Solidarity Fund, the KZNCWP also implemented the second leg of gender-based violence initiative in the same district between the 18th and 19th of July. And the project really seeks to promote access to information at the local government level, specifically around gender-based violence. And of course, what we've also noted here, how the lack of information perpetuates the actual abuse of women and children. And it becomes imperative for us to then ensure that as much of the society should be aware of where to get assistance from, especially if they are victims. Next slide, please. So internally within the department, we're also driving policies that all relate to gender-based violence. And the focus here is on the implementation of the heads of departments' 8 principles of action for promoting women empowerment and gender equality. So it draws on the mandate from the Constitution of our country and also from the Public Service Gender Equality Strategic Framework. And of course, just from a policy perspective within the department, we've ensured that we've had compliance in terms of all the policies that you see. And also, if you look at the Act around employment equity, we are also ensuring that we are in compliance with the various acts. So as you can see, we are driving the fight against gender-based violence, even internally in the department. You can move to the next slide, please.
You're left with 2 minutes.
Okay, so if you then look at some of the upcoming activities that are related to awareness, we've just listed what those are. And of course, on the 25th of August, our Deputy Minister also participated in the Southern Women's Government, also for Women Leadership Development Program. And you can also see that we've had some sessions in-house just with regards and just protection of rights around persons within the workplace. And if you also then So if you also then move to the next slide, please, I should be coming to a close. You will see that we've also just given a graphic representation of our gender equality statistics at the senior management level. It's maybe just to note that we are at 50% female, 50% male, and institutionally, we are actually dominantly women. With 62% of us being female within the department. Next slide, please. You can actually skip this because we talk about basic equity. And of course, I've already spoken to this slide that shows our SMS representation. And if we could then move to the next slide. This just gives us the summary that I've also spoken to earlier. So the way forward for us then, Chair, is that we need to then make sure that we prioritize and continue the work that we are doing and just really to recalibrate our resolve to fight gender-based. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, DG. Employment in Labor, DM Muloi, I've seen that you are with us here.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you so much, honorable members and members of the Multi-Party Women Caucus. Allow me, Honorable Chairperson, that to just have some few reflections, some developments that are there with regards to our interventions as the Department of Employment and Labor, which will, of course, be of interest to this caucus. Our Department of Employment and Labor, honorable members, has brought to Parliament some amendments that we have and that we are well thought and well considered as being worth of insertion into the Employment Equity Act. The Portfolio Committee, honorable members, on Employment and Labor has been working around the clock since 2020, ensuring that it is leaving not even a single stone unturned in looking at those amendments. We saw the Portfolio Committee last week of Employment and Labor concluding its considerations of the amendments to employment equity legislation. And this Employment Equity Amendment Bill will very soon be placed before the National Assembly. And when it does, I have no doubt, honorable members, that some amongst us will actually shoot down women with the aim to drop down the law that is intended to correct, among others, a picture that in 2018, for instance, there were 76.5% top male managers against only 23.5% of female top managers in our domestic labor market. So I'm not gonna get or bore you with those details. One can only go on and on these huge inequalities or disparities, and at some point, honorable members, that one is trying to drive home here is that if Chairperson, we have to talk about accountability, leadership, and coordination. That means, among others, we have to check what is working, what is not working for us. And it is with that responsibility where we have found out that self-regulation is not doing justice to our cause, to the women's struggle in particular. When our laws are overloaded with self-regulation text, they tend to be that vehicle I'm sure you all will relate to, that is standing at one place to a point of even reversing instead of advancing transformation. So the Employment Equity Act of 1998 is one of the progressive laws in the country, but it became necessary to amend it to enhance its effectiveness. And with the amendments we have proposed, we aim to empower the minister to regulate sector-specific employment equity targets. And we also aim to bring about some incentives to foster better forward movement on the whole issue of changing the picture in the world of work, where women marginalization and discrimination should be thrown to the dustbin of history. So we are amending the Employment Equity Act that is already containing some impressive text, which will be in our presentation now. And members, honorable members, we don't want this list to list all of the laws and legislations that we have here. What one was attempting to do here was to provide some of the challenges that would hamper progress. And importantly, how do we intervene to make sure that we move forward? I want to give, and I'm sure I've made an example of what blunt teeth does to some of our pieces of legislation and what we are doing about it. Menswaki Mamashela will go through the presentation and touch on some of the areas that I will not talk to here, but there are also other documents, honorable members, that we have shared with the members, and there is one interesting presentation that you should be having with you, which is sourced from the 21st annual report of the Commission for Employment Equity. And we have the Commission's chairperson with us, Ms. Tabia Kabinde, who, as and when necessary, as there are questions, who can come in and make a contribution or respond to some of those questions. But honorable members of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus, you also should be having within the documentation that we have presented, shared a code of good practice on handling of sexual harassment cases in the workplace. Chairperson, allow me at this point in time to hand over to Ms. Mashabela to take us through the presentation. With your permission, she's the Director, Employment Equity from the Directorate of Employment Equity. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, DM. The Director. 15 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Minister, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers present today, other honorable members, including my colleagues from other departments. Good morning. Chairperson, our presentation today covers areas that deals with Pillar 1 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-based Violence, and we're required as the department to report in relation to what we are doing to hold the private sector accountable for the development and rollout of sexual harassment policies and workplace strategies. I just want to confirm that as the Department of Labor, we are responsible to ensure that our labor laws are complied with not only by private sector, however, by the public sector as well, inclusive of non-profit organizations such as religious organizations and political parties that our employers are supposed to actually comply with all labor laws. And secondly, Chair, if we look at our presentation, we first start by sharing a brief information on the existing laws that we have in relation to regulating or preventing harassment and sexual harassment in our workplaces. And secondly, we'll touch briefly on our legal obligations of employers in relation to prevention and elimination of harassment, inclusive of sexual harassment and gender-based violence. And lastly, we'll share with the forum what the Department of Employment is doing to hold private sector, and I'll add public sector, accountable to prevent and eliminate all forms of harassment. Next slide. Honorable Chairperson, we are responsible as part of our mandate as the department to ensure that we regulate and create conducive workplaces which are fair and all forms of unfair discrimination are eliminated. In relation to the issue of gender-based violence and harassment, we have different pieces of labor laws that deals with this issue in relation to ensure that we comply with the ILO Convention concerning violence and harassment. The first piece of legislation that we are all familiar with is the Labor Relations Act. In terms of the Labor Relations Act, all forms of violence and harassment should be eliminated. And if someone is conducting such incidents of violence and harassment in the workplace, that is seen as a misconduct, and those people should be subjected to discipline. And we further published a code of good practice that deals with unfair dismissals, and included in that code under the labor relations, we deal with issues of violence and harassment as forms of misconduct. And in addition, also the Labor Relations Act actually prohibits all forms of harassment and violence as a form of unfair labor practice. We should all remember, Chairperson, that Labor Relations Act actually fulfills the obligations under the Constitution in terms of Section 23 that promotes the implementation of fair labor practice. And we believe that in that regard, the LRA also complies with the ILO Convention on Violence and Harassment. In addition to the LRA, we also administer or foresee the implementation of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Under this act, any forms of violence and harassment are seen as occupational health and safety hazard, and employers are required by the OSHA Act to eliminate all forms of occupational health and safety hazard. And we believe that in this regard, we are also ensuring that employees that are in our workplaces are protected against all forms of harassment and violence under the OSHA Act. Next slide. One piece of legislation that is a key labor law legislation that deals squarely in relation to issues of the elimination of unfair discrimination, Chairperson, is the Employment Equity Act. The Deputy Minister alluded to this act. This act gives effect to the provisions of the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, that we should protect the rights of employees to ensure that they have access to their equal rights. And by so doing, this legislation ensures that we actually obligate all employers in our labor market to take all measures to eliminate all forms of unfair discrimination in their own employment policies and practices. When we deal with unfair discrimination, we also include all forms of violence and harassment that may actually prohibit employees based on their gender, sex, or sexual orientation to access equal opportunities in the workplace. And when we look at Section 6.1 of this act, is very specific, Chairperson, that no person may be unfairly discriminated directly or indirectly in the workplace based on any of the prohibited grounds that emanates from the Constitution, Section 9 of the Constitution. Of note here, we highlight that no one should be unfairly treated based on their gender, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, to mention a few, Chairperson, to ensure that also employees that are gender non-conforming, those that belong to the LGBTQIA+ groups, are also protected under this law, to ensure that all forms of violence and harassment against these employees are prohibited. Section 3 of this act, Chairperson, is very specific. It deals with the prohibition of harassment, and harassment in this context actually covers all forms of harassment, not limited to sexual harassment. There are new emerging forms, Chairperson, that we have come across in the workplace. such as online harassment and bullying, mobbing, and workplace racial harassment, just to mention a few. Also, if we go on, Chairperson, our Section 60 of the Employment Equity Act is very clear and puts legal obligations on all employers. I've said earlier on, Chairperson, that when we refer to employers, we are not only limited to private sector, we are inclusive of the public sector, all government departments, local government. Also, we are looking at non-profit organizations that are employers in their own right, political parties, religious organizations, just to mention a few. In Section 60, the law is clear that there should be proactive and remedial steps that are taken by all employers to prevent all forms of harassment. And this is inclusive of sexual harassment, violence, and also the new emerging forms of harassment that I've alluded to, in particular, the workplace bullying, online harassment, which has been brought up on us as a new norm that people work from home. So they're already protected under Section 60. This Act also requires that all employers should adopt harassment policies in their workplaces. And also it encourages and promotes that in our bargaining councils or bargaining forums in the different sectors, our collective agreements should actually include provisions that deal with the prevention and elimination of harassment. And also in those policies, we should include procedures to be followed when one is aggrieved and has been harassed, and we should know what kind of procedures must be followed to lodge those grievances. And those policies should also be inclusive of the different advices and assistance that employers should offer in relation to counseling, treatment, care, and support programs. And lastly, Chair, just to highlight a few on this slide, that any employer that is found to have contravened the requirements of Section 60 by not taking any necessary steps to eliminate and prevent harassment in workplaces, they are rendered to have been vicariously liable in terms of the law, and they can actually be penalized by the Labor Court and the CCMA for failure to comply with their legal obligations under this Act. Next slide. Honorable Chairperson, I'm going to conclude in relation to our role as the Department of Employment and Labor to hold all employers accountable. We have actually started immediately in 2019, Chairperson, after the ILO adopted a new international labor standard, Convention 190 on violence and harassment. We immediately joined our efforts with the CCMA and conducted campaigns to educate and raise awareness in the workplace regarding the new ILO convention, and also to raise awareness in relation to the sexual harassment cases that were handled by the CCMA and the Labor Court. And the intention was to ensure that we ready ourselves, Chairperson, for the ratification of the ILO convention process, which is now in Parliament. And we want to ensure that the labor market is ready when this ratification is finalized by Parliament to implement it and address all areas of this convention. And again, Chair, continuing with our campaigns this year, we are busy interacting with different stakeholders. We started in August, and now in September, we are meeting with different trade unions, Chairperson, educating them on the ILO convention and the existing codes of good practice that assist employers and employees, including trade unions, how to prevent and eliminate all forms of harassment in their workplaces. And we are doing this by making sure that we conduct our advocacy campaigns to cover as many employers and civil organizations as much as possible, Chairperson. If we look also, Chair, we want to highlight this issue because there is a perception that our inspectors powers to issue undertakings and compliance orders in relation to enforcing the workplace policies and programs on violence and harassment. There is a clear distinction, Chairperson, in the law that inspectors only have powers to advocate and raise awareness on issues of violence and harassment when they interact with employers. However, they have no jurisdiction, Chairperson, in relation to enforcement. The enforcement of issues of unfair discrimination, which is inclusive of harassment and violence, are actually given to the CCMA. And this far, Chair, we see that the CCMA is actually handling less cases, although the provisions of the law allows complainants to approach the CCMA irrespective of their ranks and status in the community. If you are a CEO or you are just a cleaner in your organization, the law requires the CCMA to deal with your case and issue the arbitration awards. As we're looking at the stats that have been reported in the previous 2 financial years at the CCMA in relation to sexual harassment cases in 2019, 2020, 2020, and 2021, the CCMA has only handled around 312 cases this far, Chairperson, and we are not sure whether the challenge is that employees don't know how their rights or whether they don't know how to complain or lodge complaints. However, we are working with the CCMA to ensure that we educate both employers and employees to fulfill their legal obligations in this regard. Next slide. Chairperson, I'm about to wrap up.
Please.
We wanted to also highlight the challenges, Honorable Chairperson, that we think hampers the progress made, irrespective of our progressive labor laws to protect the rights of employees. We believe that there is resistance from the employer side. We foresee high levels of non-compliance by employers to develop and implement sexual harassment workplace policies and programs. And we believe that employees in those organizations should actually be able to lodge complaints with the CCMA so that the CCMA can enforce the provisions of the law. Another key challenge is that there is a limited knowledge of employees in relation to accessing their equality rights under the Constitution and also under the different pieces of labor laws. And we are working very closely with the different trade unions to assist them to capacitate their employees so that they are able to lodge complaints. Furthermore, we have assessed the collective agreements that are submitted to the department, and we believe that most of the collective agreements that are agreed between the trade unions and employers are limited when coming to the inclusion of provisions of issues on harassment and sexual harassment. And we are encouraging our stakeholders in those bargaining councils to ensure that they include the provisions of sexual harassment in their are lacking in relation to issues of harassment and sexual harassment, especially when we are training new employees and also training new shop stewards in this regard. And again, we notice that as we interact in the different sectors with different stakeholders, that advocacy and education campaigns conducted by us, I must say, this stage, and also by employers and trade unions are only reactive and not proactive. And we are then recommending, Chairperson, that we should actually work together to encourage the development and implementation of harassment policies and programs in our workplaces. And hopefully in our agreements that come out of the bargaining councils, inclusive of the public service bargaining councils, those collective agreements will include enforceable provisions that deals with all forms of harassment. And our education campaigns, Chairperson, should not only be limited to workplaces, but I think we need to actually start from our foundation phases in our different school fraternity. And we are working closely in this regard, Chairperson, with the education sector to ensure that we incorporate all issues of harassment and sexual harassment in the curriculum at schools to ensure that we prohibit all forms of violence and harassment from an early stage. Last slide, Chairperson. Can we go to the next last slide?
No, just wrap up. Oh.
Oh. Chairperson, or the Women's Caucus, that in order to ensure that we address all areas of the ILO convention, to ready ourselves to implement this convention, both the department and the Commission for Employment Equity have actually developed a comprehensive code of good practice, which is sitting at NETLAC as we speak. And we envisage that the NETLAC deliberations by social partners will be finalized before end of this year to enable us to publish and implement this code by March 2022, meaning that we'll be ready, Chairperson, to regulate the labor market in compliance with the ILO convention. And we are continuing, Chair, to target not only the employers, but the civil society as well in our campaigns, because we have civil society organizations that run education and advocacy campaigns in rural areas on the rights of all workers, to ensure that they are also educated in relation to issues of harassment and violence, inclusive of gender-based violence. Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity to present.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Department of Communication. I've seen only the DDGs.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. My name is Thulisile Manzini, the DDG responsible for governance and administration in the department, and I will be taking the presentations. Greetings to you, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, ministers and deputy ministers that are here, my colleagues, and I will also want to again reiterate the apology from Minister Chabeni, who couldn't be here today, but I was informed that there was a formal apology that was tabled. Also apology for the Acting Director General, Ms. Nongubela Jordan Chani, who couldn't be here also because she's also attending another meeting. Chairperson, I'm accompanied by Ms. Petronella Lindas, the Chief Director for Gender, and Ms. Tandim Dlalose, the Director, and Ms. Matope Tusi, and other colleagues from the department that are on the call. I'll be very quick, Chairperson.
Can you start with your presentation, please?
Yes. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. The overview and background, Chairperson, I will not dwell too much on that, but just to give context that this particular department, we are tasked with the responsibility of developing policies for the ICT sector, and we have recently drafted a policy, the National Integrated Information and Communication Technology, a policy that includes several provisions for the empowerment of women in ICT sector. And the department has also released the broadband policy that outlines the plan to connect South Africa, and the needs of women has again been centrally placed as part of the implementation of that policy. And also the National Development Plan, Chairperson, as you know, that by 2020, ICTs underpin the development of a dynamic information society and knowledge economy that is more inclusive and prosperous. Therefore, a seamless information infrastructure, which we are responsible for, will meet the needs of the citizen, business, and all the public sector, providing access to the wide range of services required for effective economic and social participation at a cost quality at least equal to South Africa's competitors. And also the role of this organization, this department, will therefore play a specific role in fostering broader economic and social participation by all citizens through the digital transformation underpinned by the 4IR. Next slide, please. Chairperson, what is our state of readiness? The department has a mandate to enable the country to be digitally ready. And in this regard, it will be best placed to advise on how technology can play a role in combating gender-based violence and domestic violence. This is one of the key roles of this department could play that we actually playing. And in terms of readiness to play this role, it should be noted that as a department, we have implemented programs with regard to GBV. There is also a need to expand these programs to include matters related to GBV, to domestic violence. And in this regard, we may need to review the financial and human resources available to do so. And it's something that we have an opportunity now, as we are busy also with our APP, to make sure that this is incorporated, especially the financial part. And the implementing entities in the portfolio can play a role in assisting us to raise awareness on the existence of the birth among citizens. And we have got about 10 entities that this portfolio is responsible for. And I will demonstrate as we move on how these different entities play their role. Next slide, please. The responsibilities, the department's plans are aligned to the National Strategic Plan on Gender-based Violence and Femicide, and committed to the following: one, to strengthen the implementation of the NSP on GBV by all our social partners, and also to expand on the call of action for men as partners and boys to stand against rape and sexual abuse of women and children, to increase awareness and drive change in the patriarchal social norms and behavior through multiple platforms. And the department has a dedicated unit that is responsible for gender equity and women's empowerment issues. Next slide, please. What is the implementation due date? What have we done with the mandate and all that we've committed to? One, we have included the gender equity and women's empowerment target in our business plan for the current financial year, focusing which is focusing on the online safety for girl children and cybersecurity, targeting the general population. We also have contributed to the amendment process on the GBV bill, and also have a critical focus on sexual offense, as they are either perpetrated online or through utilizing online platform to access the person against whom these offenses are perpetrated. We are also in the process of implementing ICT women empowerment programs, as well as comprehensive child online protection programs. We have also included these targets on gender mainstreaming and gender equity in our business plan for 2020-21 in line with the NSP, so that we can be held accountable on what we have actually committed to do. We have developed a gender and ICT strategy that is guiding the document for the department with regard to the implementation of the gender programs. Also have supported places of safety for women and children through facilitating access to training and ICT. And also we have raised awareness on online safety of women and the importance of cybersecurity, as well as commemorating critical international and national days focusing on women and girls, such as International Girls in ICT Day, International Women's Day, and National Women's Day, and also the 16th day of activism of no violence against women and children. These are the tangibles. And in terms of staff, to see that we are not just paying lip service, we, as a department, the complement, a staff complement is about 328, and of that, about 55% of that is women. And we have also on the next, the following paragraph, we were able to then show in terms of those figures. And also on sexual harassment cases, there are none that are reported. But yes, there are structures open in the department for such to be reported, but there is nothing that has been reported. On work done by the entities, like I've said, that we have got 10 entities. At high level, we have got the SABC, and what is it that they do to make sure that they also contribute to this cause? One, the GBV campaign still continues to date with liners, interviews, discussions around GBV as part of the broadcast plan. Also, the SABC Education has a year-long program against femicide and rape launched in February 2020, and there's money that we have put into that. And for the television, we've put 2.7 million, and for the radio, 3.8 million to support the program. SABC Corporate Service investment, the CSI supported the following NGOs on on GPV, and the budget that we have put aside for that for those NGOs, 2.9 million. And this was during the lockdown. Also, we have got SITA, which is our state information technology agencies. SITA also has a zero tolerance approach to cyber violence and bullying, and SITA harassment policy is being reviewed and currently consultation with various stakeholders. And also the information security advocates for and ensures prevention of cyberbullying and fosters addresses to the existing information system security policies. The next slide, please. SAPO, which is the South African Post Office, in 2019, SAPO launched a gender desk that consists of both gender to coordinate the responses to the crisis of gender-based violence and femicide. Also, SAPO develop policies such as your sexual harassment policies that enforce gender mainstreaming. So there are strategies in place to address these challenges faced by all genders, especially women within SAPO, to address the plight of all affected by violence. And currently, SAPO aims at changing patriarchal norms and behavior through high-level raising awareness and prevention workshop. And also we have got your Post Bank. The Post Bank has developed policies especially directed at women in the workplace. Post Bank also offers employee assistance and support, and also Post Bank values, policies and procedure provides a mechanism for protection of vulnerable employees from acts of violence and intimidation and harassment also in the workplace. Let's proceed. Next slide, please. We have got BBI, which is the broadband in Franco. They have several initiatives to address gender-based violence and femicide. They've got zero tolerance approach to cyber violence bullying through the appropriate policies and sensitive reporting of GPV challenges that hamper progress made with regard to the above and the steps taken to address that. And also the White Ribbon Campaign. This is a flagship program led by the Joe Slovo Foundation and supported by the UN, and the program sets criteria for meeting and being a white ribbon environment, which include your leadership support, buy-in, HR policies that addresses these issues that we are faced with, dealing with perpetrators on GPV and all those that are listed there. Then we have got USASA, the quarterly progress on the implementation of the gender-based violence and femicide. They keep on giving those progress reports. And also on the issue of your GPV, there is a committee that was appointed and USASA implementation plan was adopted and approved. As per USASA mandatory pillar 5, the economic power, the first quarter recruitment was done, because to show what exactly they have done, the first quarter recruitment was they appointed a female senior manager, and also they appointed district coordinators, which were 33 tertiary qualified unemployed youth, of which 13 of those were females. The next slide, please. And on Centec socio-economic transformation strategy, in particular, the BBB initiative on enterprise and supply development, on which is aligned with the key activities and indicators of the strategic pillar and key intervention below. One, it is to broaden the ownership for women, youth, and SMMEs, as set aside SMMEs. So also on their procurement, women SMMEs with a target of 40% and 30% youth. And these are things that are tangible that we can produce and show that is happening, again, to show that we are not only a lip service. And on ZETNA, the promotion of female SMME development and digital skills development, ZETNA exceeded its register reseller training program during the last quarter, and the target were 3 and 9 were achieved. And the achievement of meeting procurement targets, which is a very critical area as well, a promotion of female SMME development, digital skills development targets, ZETNA continues to remain to be within the budget on its procurement budget lines. And about the training that ZETNA is offering, number of citizens were trained in basic digital literacy, because for us to say we are moving towards 4IR, it's very, very important that we have this type of training. And out of 7,100 trained, 4,291 were women. And also the number of citizens trained on specialist technology, out of 697 that were trained, 281 were women. Again, number of employees within government departments and institutions that are participating in digital transformation advocacy and awareness campaign. 200 were trained, of which 126 were women. Next slide, please. And the last one, the last entity, the work done by the Films and Publication Board, very important, the Amendment Act. It includes criminalizing of revenge pornography, because we have seen these things happening and how women in particular got embarrassed by this. So they made sure that they amended the act to include that the criminalization of the revenge pornography. And what is the definition of that? It is revealing or sexually explicit images or videos of a person posted on the internet, typically by a former sexual partner, without the consent of the subject, and in order to cause them distress or embarrassment, harassment, and defamation. Also, to familiarize law enforcement officers with the content of the FP Act to protect women and children. It's important that we work with these law enforcement agencies, because they need to know and understand that when this type of cases, cases come to the fore or to their attention, they know how to deal with them. And also the stakeholder management focus on NGOs, CBO schools, religious group working with the child protection space. And these are the research that have been done, all those reports, the role of regulator in curbing power of tech giants, violence against women, the Presidential Council on Women, a report was produced, can be made available. Working with the GIZ and UN Women on the Step It Up for Gender project, and also working with Gender Links on the role of women in media research. Next slide, please. This is to show, if you look at the sector, how women are represented at board level. Across the sector, it's about 25%, executive directors, 25%, Black female executive management, 30%, senior management, 30%, and middle management, 38%. And at junior management, we have got 44%. Next slide, please. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you for the opportunity. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manzini. We're proceeding to GBVF Private Sector Response Fund. Dr. Dlamini, over to you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson.
Afternoon.
And good afternoon, members, honorable members, ministers here, deputy ministers, ladies and gentlemen. I have a challenge with my technical support, so I'll switch off the video and ask the person to drive the slides on my behalf. Thanks. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to introduce ourselves. It's the first time that we come to present to the committee, and we are pleased to be able to do that. I would like to just take us back to when we were formed as the Private Sector Gender-based Violence and Femicide Response Fund 1. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the slides from here.
You only have 15 minutes.
Okay. I would like to introduce the representative board that we have. If we can go to the pictures, we have Wendy Lucas-Bull, who's the deputy minister, deputy chairperson, and she's also the chairperson of the Financial Fundraising and Investment Committee. We have Professor Michael Katz, who is a member of the Audit and Risk Committee, but he's also the chairperson of ENS Africa, who are the pro bono service providers to the fund when it comes to legal, governance, and tax. We have Trifosa Ramano, who is a member of Pillar 1 of the NSP for Gender-based Violence. She's also the chairperson of Audit and Risk. We have Dr. Namane Mahau and Mary Papaya. who are co-chairs of the ABC subcommittee, which stands for Advocacy, Behavioral Change, and Communication Committee. We have Dr. Shahida Omar, who is known for her role as the Executive Director of the Teddy Bear Clinic. We also have Umfundisi Bafana Kumalo, who is known for Sonke Justice. We also have Ella, who is the Executive Director of Ilita Labantu, based in the Western Cape. We also have Lutando Vuba, representing young men, who works for Standard Bank. Dr Dlamini is our CEO that started on the 1st of June with the fund. And we have the young woman, Uviwe Nzaluba, who works for the UN. And then we have Faith Kanyile. She chairs the the Disbursement Monitoring and Evaluation Subcommittee. She is the Executive Director of WDB. We have Dr. Leslie Ann, who is the founder of Masimanyane, and we also have Rose Kinley. So that is the structure that we formed to ensure that there is governance and a proper framework. If I can get that next slide, please. It always makes sense to start at the beginning of where we started before we actually were born as the fund. I always like taking it back to the shutdown movement in 2018, which precipitated the presidential summit, the first presidential summit to focus on gender-based violence and femicide. This gave birth to the interim steering committee, which produced the NSP on gender-based violence, which has become the Bible for the Response Fund. We were then launched by the president on the 4th of February. The next slide, please. And one of the first things we did when we were launched was to ask the presidency to organize a civil society consultative meeting that happened on the 15th of February. By then, we were not even a fully formed board. There was just the 5 of us. The main reason for that was for us to understand what is the expectation from civil society, who we are here to serve. And I'll share later on as to what was the outcome of that in terms of the things that we've done. As I said, we're not even registered then. We're in the process of being registered, assisted by ENS Africa. And then we formed a very representative governance structure that we are happy with. And we also complied with the registration for Section 18 to make sure that when donors make their submissions, they have recognition and the deduction from tax. We were assisted in the first 4 months by APSA, who helped with project management and secretarial services over and above the banking services that they supply pro bono for the first 12 months. On the 12th of July, we came out with the RFP for NGOs and CBOs, and I'll later show you what areas we are focusing on. And this was closed on the 6th of August. Next slide, please. So as alluded to earlier on, we are guided by the NSP, and the 6 pillars inform the strategy of how we intend to assist in the eradication of gender-based violence and femicide. Next slide, please. So we ran a thorough process as a board on theory of change, assisted by Chikululu, who we selected to be the implementing arm of the fund's initiative. And based on that thorough assessment of the situation, one of the things that we considered was the minuscule amount of money that we've been able to raise so far. However, we remain optimistic, but how we can actually change that in spite of the economic situation that is not great is if we show impact early, we are more likely to attract more funds and also attract more partners to work with us. So we chose, next slide, please. We chose the two pillars, that is pillar 2 and pillar 3. And when it comes to pillar 1, we believe that pillar 3 will actually talk to that in many ways. One of them being, one of the challenges that was raised by civil society, which is a national crisis, as we all know, is the DNA backlog. So that was one of the main challenges that was raised at the civil society meeting. So we took it upon ourselves that we will work with SAPS to try and find a solution. We do believe that when we serve justice, it actually becomes a preventative measure which addresses pillar 2, but also its accountability and leadership by those that are entrusted with serving justice. So in a way, we believe that targeting that space identified as critical is very important in addressing gender-based violence in general. Next slide, please. We always like to thank the people that assist us, making it viable for us to exist. So I'll ask for the next slide, please. Starting with the donors, the donations that, excuse me, were pledged when the president launched the fund amounted to 128 million rand. That has since increased to about 147 million. We are aware that that is not a big increase, but under the circumstances with COVID, with the unrest that had even more impact on an economy that wasn't growing, we understand that it's not going to be easy, but we remain optimistic. So we look at the donations, they come in two forms. It's either direct cash or indirect program funding. There are those few companies that provide both direct cash and indirect program funding, like Ford Foundation, but others choose one or the other. And in terms of cash that was pledged, we're sitting at about 109 million rand. Of that, we've only been able to collect 82 million rand. We are sure that we will collect the rest. It just takes a lot of follow-up to make sure that we have money in the kitty, because if it's not in the bag, you can't really do much with the donation or the pledge. The next slide, please. Here we share the different companies that have made donations. Next slide, please. Here we share the different companies that have offered services, and you can actually quantify in rand terms the services that they are offering or have offered. The ones I would just like to mention is a small company that's run by Rich Mkondo, who actually offered communication services earlier on. Veliso Nochikila, a young woman who offered, she's a CA, she offered to work pro bono for the first 3 months. Lynn Stevens, who is a brand PR and communication specialist, who's offering her services pro bono. The company that is not here that I would like to thank is SABC. They've offered their services in terms of TV and radio. They were very helpful when we launched the RFP. Our CEO could actually go on a roadshow by actually talking, alerting people of the RFP and what we are looking for. in different community stations. We are lucky that she can speak 7 languages, so she was able to be accessible to a wider audience. Next slide, please. So in terms of the request for proposals, as explained earlier, it was based on a theory of change, which enabled us to make the decision as to our focus area. In terms of geography, it is national. In terms of particular areas, one of the things that came out from research that was done by a company working with Chikululu a few months before we were launched is just how rural areas tend to be neglected, and also even some urban areas. It's the big cities that tend to get the attention and therefore the funding. So those are some of the areas that we will also focus on because we want to have impact. Otherwise, there is no reason for us to exist. We received a few, quite a good turnout in terms of RF proposals, especially substantial interest from the CBOs, and we are happy with that. The process of analyzing the grant applications is carried out by Chikululu, our partner is indicated, and there is a comprehensive project plan for the award disbursement and the evaluation of the impact. Next slide, please. So it's over 400 applications that have been lodged in response, and the media release was translated into official languages, different indigenous official languages, just to make sure accessibility over and above our CEO going into community radio stations and the TV. And we also use different media platforms, including social media, just to make sure that people are aware of the, what do you call it, the RFP. Next slide, please.
2 minutes left.
Okay, so we actually will be coming out in October with allocation of those that have been successful. Next slide, please. Okay, just another, the next slide, please. This is quite important. As alluded to earlier on, one of the areas that was identified is the DNA backlog. So what have we done as the board? Because within the board, we don't have forensic scientists because it's a rare skill. We formed a subcommittee that advises the board and co-opted well-known and respected forensic scientists and forensic pathologists, and also human genetics specialists to assist. We are in conversations with SAPS to try and find a short-term solution, but also look at a long-term solution so that we don't go back to where we are right now. Next slide, please. The other area that we have identified is an integrated dashboard that tells us where we are in terms of domestic violence, in terms of gender-based violence and femicide, so that it's easier to plan and influence policy if the information that you have is accurate. On the 10th of August, assisted by academics at WITS, we called for a workshop to just understand from researchers, from civil society, activists within the space, what information exists, what technology exists in terms of prevention, amongst other things. And it is our intention to work with the Pillar 6 group to make sure that we do have a comprehensive integrated dashboard that will inform policy when it comes to accurate information about the incidents in the country. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini, for your presentation. And thank you very much to all the progress reports that we received today from different departments, and thank you to the deputy ministers that are here accompanying their departments. Honorable members, we are now going to engage the report that we've just received. I will suggest that because of the time, I will allow a speaker to ask 3 questions. Only 3 questions for the first round. We may take the rest if time still allows, or honorable members will also be asked to write them down, and we'll send them via the secretary to the department, and the department will do so. But it wasn't my intention to say we have to write, because we need to get the responses, all of us as a caucus. Thank you very much. Over to you, honorable members. I will now allow hands. I can see Honorable Siboletwa, Honorable Jane, and then Honorable Judith Chabalala, Honorable Magdalene. And then Honorable Sharif and Honorable Van Schalkwyk. Honorable Siboletwa, you can start.
Okay, let me start by welcoming all the presentation, Chairperson, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. Number one, I would like to say to everybody who has actually presented here that we welcome all the plans in place and interventions made to ensure that we deal with gender-based violence and femicide. And my input is that we need to just actually implement the communication strategy that has been used in terms of dealing with COVID-19 for informing our people and sharing information. So we just need to do that. Number two, it's on issues of uniformity. I just want to say to Caucus and other departments that will be working with the municipality, they must not compromise. When they get to the district model, they must ensure that everybody does everything by the book. There shouldn't be issues of compliance. If they need a focal person in terms of gender issues, it should be a focal person. If it's a unit, it should be a unit. Number three, Chairperson, is with regards to the gender responsive fund 1. I just want to check if they have already closed, because I know that they said they closed on the 16th of August. And I'm worried because of some of the people who are residing in rural areas, they didn't get an opportunity perhaps to see this launch on TV or on a radio station. So I just want to check, how are they going to ensure that they accommodate those who are in very rural areas where people couldn't get this particular information for application of funding? And if so, could they share information like in emails and as well requirements that is needed for this particular fund? And lastly, I would want to say to them, when they dispatch to those who have qualified as beneficiaries, they must make sure that they actually include all provinces, all regions and local areas in terms of the dispatchment. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Chabalala.
Yes, thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Bilankulu. Let me pass my special greetings to yourself and Honorable Zanele Nkomo for a specific reason as my whip. Look, Chair, for me really is to appreciate all the presentation. I'm looking at the time, we have a house seating. So I also wouldn't want to really delay and take much of your time. However, I think that perhaps moving forward, we need to find a way to cut down on the presentations so that we're able to appreciate them nicely and we're able to engage them per slides and per presentation as things where one will just want to be specific to the ones that would have piqued some interest, but all of them, they made sense to all of us. Now, the one for the justice and constitutional development that was delivered
Can
by...
you please switch on your video, if possible?
Oh, you want me to switch? Okay,
Yes.
my bandwidth is very bad, Honorable Bilangulu, but I can do that. I can do that quickly if you're okay with it, but my bandwidth is bad.
We are live.
You are live.
The
So
society wants to see you.
The society wants to see me.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Let me go back and see my video. Where's the video? Start video. All right. Can you see me now? Thank you so much. So I was saying the Justice and Constitutional Development, Honorable Bilangulu, I want to find out the NSP, the National Strategic Plan on Gender-based Violence and Femicide, and the integration of the NSP priorities with all the strategic plans and APPs of departments. Are we able to really monitor them properly? Because I think that we need to monitor them if all the departments are doing that, and which is the strategic department that does that, that is responsible for that. For me, I'm really interested. That way we're able to really gauge and check the progress that has been reported. And the second point on the issue on the justice, they're calling for stricter bail conditions and harsher sentences for perpetrators of violence and this sexual abuse against women and children. I want to find out that as justice, are we able to track those and be able to report and have a basket where we report them properly to say that these are the harsher sentences within the criminal justice system, but also within the judiciary itself, to say this is what we've been able to check and these are the sentences that we are getting. And for me, I think that's what we need to really capture in the moment. Lastly, the COCTA. The COCTA one speaks about, obviously, we are appreciating the women's struggle, Mama Mandela, Winnie Mandela, and all of them. And I thank them for starting with that point. However, I want to find out as well the district model as to at what point are we able to say these are the women that we're going to track insofar as in the districts, be it the issues of occupying strategic positions as women, but also checking the issues of capacity. What are we doing to capacitate women in the districts to ensure financial management, one, as a priority that they're able to have, and it's something that they're able to instill, and we are able to see that indeed these are the women, and this is what we are really producing in the larger scheme of things. But thank you so much for your indulgence, Chair. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chabalala. Honorable Magdalene, my apologies for calling you about your first name, but the gadget has only indicated that. Over to you. Honorable Sharif, can you come in?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. At the village is very bad. So if I do cut off, just let me know and I'll turn my video off. Chairperson, it's you know me, I have a whole list of questions. And so to bring it down to 3, I am going to respect your instruction, Chair, and I'm going to start immediately. Number 1, we heard about the issues. Yes, I will, Chair. Just let us know when you need it by,
Okay.
and then we'll send it.
So the first question is related to public service and administration when they were speaking about the lack of reporting of sexual harassment. This is not a new phenomenon. Women have always felt that they don't have a safe space to report sexual harassment. So what are some of the interventions that the department is looking to do to create a safer space? Perhaps it would be a good idea to look at new innovative reporting tools. Perhaps that's more focused on having the option of being anonymous and reporting a perpetrator, and then investigations happening there. So I don't think it's good enough to just come and tell us that people are not reporting sexual harassment, full stop. I think the department must work on a strategy on how we create safer spaces so that women feel safer to come and report. Second question is also related to public service and administration on the interventions for challenges they face. The officials said that they know that reporting to writing to departmental heads is not the best way, and I absolutely agree. I think we spoke about it at our last meeting, but we need to find new ways of holding them accountable. And the question is, do directors and deputy directors have specific KPIs within their individual performance reviews in order to implement the National Strategic Plan? Like I said at Women's Parliament, I think if you hold individuals accountable and directors, deputy directors with specific KPIs on their performance assessments to implement the NSP, that have a choice and will get them to do it. The last question goes to the GBVF fund. I'm really happy to have met you. This is indeed the first presentation, not only to the Women's Parliament, but we haven't seen you in our committee of women, youth, and persons with disabilities. So I look forward for you to come there. And I just wanted to find out what and how is the relationship between the fund and the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sharif. Honorable Van
Chairperson, I'm.
Hello.
Chairperson, I'm in.
Oh.
Mahlengwa.
Okay, Mahlengwa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Yes, thank you. I have two questions. In fact, it's seeking clarity questions on correctional services and Department of Commission. In correctional services, is the protection order really protect or prevent domestic violence? Because if there is something happening, no one was doing that follow-up of that. What has happened to the complainant when the perpetrator has given that order or not? Because threats are ongoing, leading them to be killed. I just want to give them the clarity on that, because one would say, if we look at a protection order, it is the same as no use. Coming to the Department of Communication, thank you very much, but I am really worried about our children, because the program there in our TVs are just no use to teach them. In fact, it was teaching them the bully of some sort. We are confused about our children's program on TV. To say some of those they are against our culture, some of them, our South African culture, because if you look at Power Rangers, those are soldiers. The one who is in ECT coming with that at school, it is a bully. Or you look at Mr. Bean just something which is ohlanyayo. Awukwazi ukuthi ingane zizohlanyela ezinye ingane. Ngiyafisa ukuthi umnyango lo wako communication mhlambe
minimize programs are overseas so that programs are la South Africa. So what engage to mold our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matlengwa. Thank you, Ma'am. Honorable Van Schalkwyk.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and welcoming all the presentations being made. I'm not going to repeat what the other members have said, but I welcome the interventions by the Department of Justice in terms of creating awareness through community radio stations. And I think that's a benchmark that can be echoed by the other departments as well. Then, Chairperson, in terms of labor, we realize that we have a lot of beautiful legislations in place, but also across the departments. But we have a challenge, Chairperson, in terms of enforcement of those beautiful legislations. So I need to know, especially with regards to the Department of Labor, if they have the necessary budget as well as the necessary inspectorate capacity to ensure compliance of these legislations pertaining to women, especially in the private sector. Then, Chairperson, with regards to monitoring and evaluation, I need to know if there are proper mechanisms in place to ensure that the protection of women, but especially the LGBTQI+ community members, to ensure that we make sure that they are protected, but also that they are not feeling afraid in terms of whistleblowing or reporting abusive practices. I think I'll pause there. Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Chirwa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity. I'm going to be keeping my video off because I also have trouble with network here in La Purea Park residents. Okay. So primarily my questions are to the Department of Justice, but I think whichever relevant stakeholder in this regard can respond to them as well, because I understand that they are layered and sometimes there's amalgamations of some sort in regards to responsibilities and jurisdiction. But I primarily want to ask about the issue of parental justice for women. It is not as such recognized as a form of GBV that 70% of households in the country, and in fact, if we are really wanting to be honest about the nature or the status of child caring and primary parenthood, we know that even in households where there is a father or the issue of absent fathers is not a crisis, even the burden of caring for children is not split equally. But I particularly want to ask about the issue of maintenance courts with single mothers, the issue of backlog. How far the backlog is and when it is going to be addressed. And also, this is one question, by the way, I'm sorry for splitting it into 3 subdivisions, but I'm trying to follow the rules of the chairperson. And the other issue is the cutting down of sheriffs as part of the support personnel in maintenance courts in regards to delivering summons. There are instances where women are expected to deliver summons themselves to these very people, and I think it's a lack of oversight or a lack of prevention in the department on how this compromises the safety of these mothers who are expected to deliver summons by themselves, and also part and parcel with the issue of maintenance. The tracking of fathers is also left out to be the responsibility of mothers. I think if there's an issue of capacity, how is the department planning to resolve that crisis, that there's no more sheriffs, women are delivering summons to men they fear themselves, and that they even have to track fathers themselves? How is the department planning to capacitate, especially on the issue of tracking down, especially if it's interprovincial relations between the parents or the guardians or people who are supposed to be taking care of these children? There is no investigative aspect in regards to this particular thing. And I think it's one of the reasons that creates such a big backlog in maintenance courts. And part and parcel with that question, lastly on that one question, I want to ask, or rather the second question I want to ask, how do we bring up questions or grievances or cases to the attention of the minister? Because we've tried the question route to parliament, but we know that there's a crisis of a failure to respond to questions within the prescribed time of 10 days.
and a 20% rate of questions not being responded to by ministers, as is their constitutional obligation, but is not happening. So I would like to know, how do we then bring these cases to the attention of the Minister for Intervention or the department? And then lastly, this is in regards to protection orders not being facilitated on weekends in many facilities in the country. Gender-based violence doesn't work during office hours. And I think this is a very strong point that you should look into increasing capacity, that women at their point of need of protection should be able to access it and not wait for Monday between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. and not even have an aspect of assistance in regards to protection orders on weekends. So I just want to know what the direction is in regards to resolving this. If there is, and if it is, just please appraise the committee on this particular part. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Shirwa. Honorable Makoni Ntuli, I think this is the last speaker. I was having only 7 hands for now. Over to you, Honorable Member.
No, Chairperson, my hand is up as well.
But on my gadget, it wasn't reflecting, Honorable Majosi. Oh, I can see Honorable Tambi also. Okay, Honorable Makoni Ntuli. Are you there? Your line is bad.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity
or you can close your video for the better network.
To me to contribute to
Mantuli, you can close the video for the better network.
Informative, and I would love to thank all the departments. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Can you hear me? Oh my
yes.
God. The video is off now, Chair. I would love to thank the President of the country to taking this and also, Chair, I would love to echo Honorable Judith Shabalala to this presentation were so long, and they needed us to interact in a lengthy sort of manner as well. To say maybe if this can be given a second chance and to your request. Chair, apparently most of the speakers before me have already covered some of the issues that I wanted to touch on. But Chair, I would love to emphasize on the issue that was mentioned by the Department of Women, that apparently departments are really not hands-on to such a crucial and a serious issue for gender-based violence and femicide. I don't know to what is it that they can respond better to it. And that the cut and paste that they reported, and one would love to even able to pick up that cut and paste, because it's of no use for the department or their commitment to gender-based violence and femicide. Now, Chair, and the meeting, for me, there is work in progress for the National Strategy Plan, Pillar 1, but let us all join hands. Even those departments that are not seeing this as important. I had a Department of Labor talking about Section 60 that is inviting all the employers to do their work. I think somehow, somewhere, there should be measures put down for the departments that are not taking this issue serious as well. We've got our DPSA, we've E to C to E is hands-on. And lastly, Chairperson, I've mentioned the full compliance of all departments. And lastly, Chairperson, to say it is still worrisome to say that in some departments. It is not that it's not there, it is there, but women still feel not safe enough to come out on such issues and trying to protect themselves whilst they are already victimized. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mantuli. Honorable Majosi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to all honorable members and all departments that are present today. Mine will maybe mainly focus on comments. Just to take you back, last week Friday when we had the Women's Parliament, there were certain issues that were raised by different women from different provinces. And then I would like to maybe when we go on, get a report maybe on the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disability to maybe check what is it that can be done in those provinces and the issues that maybe have been raised by those women who were in the Women's Parliament, so that as the Women's Caucus, we are able then to move with the issues that were raised in the Women's Parliament. And also the fact that when we raised the issues of counselors and social workers being provided, especially in the Department of Police stations will need that capacity as such that women are experiencing problems when they go and report sexual offenses and domestic violence. And also in the health department, we would also need that. I think there's one woman, I don't know, honorable member, who raised an issue of being single parents as women. It is very strenuous, Chairperson, to be single women, and some of the women maybe would not know how to then contain that and control themselves and give love to the children that we give birth to. I think what has raised is very important of the programs, maybe that will be aligned with what we want to see in the growth and development of our children. And also it would also help to have that in the Department of Health, to have counselors and social workers that would be able to help, because we don't know what these women go through. And when they get home with their kids, we don't know what transpires in those homes. So they would need assistance in terms of maybe talking to a professional that will be able to help them. Maybe if we can have those programs in the Department of Health and maybe get a report that how far can we go in terms of maybe having counselors and social workers in that aspect. And then I welcome the presentation of the Department of Justice in terms of sexual offenses, that we know that in prisoners, there are many cases that we usually get, even though that they are not reported timeously, but maybe that will also help. I heard that there will be they do have a system that prisoners will be able to report those sexual offenses that maybe might have take place in those certain prisoners that the incident would occur. That those are the main concerns that I would have wanted to raise, Chairperson, to make sure that as women we are able to raise our kids properly and we are able to give them the guidance that they need. But also would need that assistance and that support that would then make you be able to raise that child, because you do not choose to be a single parent, but when the father then leaves you, then what transpires in that? And there's anger management that you must go through, you know, there's disappointments and so forth. So if we can take that into consideration going forward and make sure maybe that the Department of Women and Youth and People with Disability can also maybe look into it, and then we see how we move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Majosi, for your comments. Honorable Mutambi, Tati, Kariwa Mwina. And good afternoon, colleagues. To join the colleagues who have welcomed all the presentation, one is excited that we are moving on the right direction as a country. Then I've got few questions that I need to raise with the GBVF response funds. Just to encode the sentiments that were raised first by Honorable Koza earlier. The question that one wants to follow up on that one, it's with regard to this issue of the RFIP, to say, as and when they are going to award this in October, I want to understand from Dr. Dlamini, whether are they going to look at the geographical spread of these countries than to focus on cities and towns, forgetting the most deep rural areas where majority of us come from, because it's the people there that are directly affected by this pandemic. On the slide as well, with regard to donor engagement approach, Dr. Dlamini indicated there's a paragraph that deals with indirect program funding, wherein they say donation in these categories are ring-fenced and the funds are to be disbursed to specific project initiative based on criteria to be agreed on and in line with the NSP and the GPF response fund. We are talking about the district development model. And then if this thing is only directed only to NPOs, excluding the people who represent the people in the form of councillors, where they live, what committees, ourselves as MPs and MPN, because then that's the way then you'll target a wrong group of people, whereas you are leading the actual people that need to get this direct funding. I should think maybe through the Ministry of Women in the presidency, they should be in line with the district development, that you bring everybody on board so that there's also ownership and transparency, because if not doing that, you find that resources are channeled to one specific group of individuals, leaving the most vulnerable groups. So those are the issues that are of concern to me, and I would like to hear the response of the chairman in that regard. Thank you so much, Chairperson. You can see it at we're now going to listen to the responses from the departments. We're going to start with the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disability. Can you give responses, DG?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Some of the questions will be responded to by Ms. Esther Maluleke. I wanted to respond to the role of the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities on the private sector fund on gender-based violence and femicide. The department was invited at the beginning to be in the board. However, we realized that there needs to be a separation of powers. The department shouldn't be seen to be influencing the fund. However, indirectly, the department has influenced the role and the thrust of the gender-based violence. And also our members also sit in some of the committees of the board. So we do play a role. However, we do not sit at the board or in the board. On the issue of monitoring and evaluation, I think this was directed to Justice. However, from the department, we have an M&E framework. I would like Ms. Maluleke to respond extensively on our role in monitoring and evaluation and respond also to other questions that have followed up. Thanks. Esther.
Thanks, DG, and thank you, Chairperson. The other questions, DG, were mainly inputs, but I'll respond to the one on monitoring and evaluation. I think I made reference during the presentation that it's work that we're really now focusing on to assist us to be able to monitor and evaluation across the 3 tiers of government. And I made reference to the tools that we are currently developing to be able to do that, and that we are consulting on those tools. We had, for instance, a workshop yesterday with provinces. This morning, I couldn't attend, but my colleagues were working with national departments, looking at those tools. But whilst we are doing that, departments are reporting, and we had to have a tool, a monitoring tool that we developed together with the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation. And that's the tool that we are currently using, that we send on a monthly basis to departments. I also alluded to the fact that we are providing technical assistance, because sometimes departments struggle. They say, oh, we want to integrate the targets of the NSP, but we don't know how best to do that. And this is a process that we take them through as part of the support that we are providing. But over and above that, when they send reports to us and say they have integrated, for instance, the targets of the the NSP into APPs, we don't take their word for it. We actually request that they send those APPs to us so that we can actually review and actually make sure that what they are saying is correct. But honorable members, this is work in progress, and we are hoping that in the next round of review of APPs by departments, now that we have taken them, most of them through this process, we will see substantial improvement. And I think when they come to present the APPs to Parliament, the next phase, you will be able also to verify what departments have always been telling us in terms of mainstreaming these targets into APPs. I think I hope I've responded to the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've noted, Chairperson, some of the suggestions in terms of how we deal with certain aspects around parenting programs, etc. There were comments, not necessarily questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Correctional Services. Can we get responses?
Thank you, Chair. It's Advocate Kambula. I have a number of questions here, but I would like just to start with the one that talks to the harsher sentences. Are we collecting statistics on sentencing? We do have the integrated case management system, that collects disaggregated data on all crimes, including crimes that relate to gender-based violence and femicide. So we collect statistics in terms of age, in terms of race, in terms of gender, and also in domestic violence, we also collect statistics in terms of the type of abuse and so on. And it is also disaggregated in terms of the province and breaking it down to the levels of the courts, so as to help us then to every year to narrow and extrapolate that data in a way that will be helping us to identify the top 10 courts in the country, where we will have then to increase our efforts and try then to remove whatever that needs to be removed from the system. So basically that is what we do. But of course, it is a system that is progressively updated. It's not yet up to there where in terms of what we would like us to have. So we are working on that. But I would also like then to say that in terms of the pillar 3, one of the indicators there is for us then to put together and establish the femicide watch. So it is a national repository where we are intending to collect statistics on reported cases of femicide, that is, as we're moving in the first phase. But we are intending then that to get even to those cases that have not been reported, going to the mortuaries and to collect them the data of cases of women who have died due to GBVF. So it is also disaggregated. It even goes to an extent of identifying even the weapons that have been done, the domestic relationship, and so on. And now we are in phase 4 of the development of the Femicide Watch, which is about now extrapolating the information from SAPS and from the Department of Justice, so as to have that live data now incorporated into the Femicide Watch. Now, moving to the next question, which is about then the domestic violence protection orders, as to what are the monitoring measures that we have put in place, so as to ensure that the protection for the victims is actually enhanced, especially after the protection order has been served. So in the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill, we have a clause 4, capital A, subsection 6, which then requires the issuing of the domestic violence safety monitoring notice to police to contact the complainant at regular intervals by means of an electronic service, so as to ensure the safety of the complainant. So it's just one way then of ensuring that after the protection order has been issued, there is a monitoring mechanism that injects the element of protection and safety for the victim, so as to curb then the incidence of femicide, because we know that some of them, they die, holding the protection orders. So we have also, in the same bill, there is a clause that talks about the provision of the support services to the victims. So one of them is the risk assessment. So I am chairing a committee that developed that risk assessment, and now we are in the process of incorporating some of the amendments that are in the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill, so as to enhance then the level of assessment that is provided by the risk assessment. So it is a tool that we intend that it be available at every service point, so as to ensure that then we open the eyes of the victim into the risks that he or she is subjected to at that particular moment. Because as you know that they come and report and apply for protection orders and then exit from the system without the case has been finalized. So right now, so the risk assessment then is opening their eyes so that they can see that if they don't take an action or if they don't stay in the criminal justice system until the case is finalized, the greater the possibilities that they may die in that relationship. So we're also then as a way then of ensuring that then we curb the incidence of femicide after the service of the protection order has been done. We have also introduced what we call the safety plan. The safety plan, then it is basically for those victims who are saying that I don't want to leave the shared residence. I still want to stay with the abuser for various reasons. As you know that our law does not force the victim out of the shared residence. So what we are saying then with the safety plan is that begin then to think about how to enhance your safety in this environment. Decide, pack your escape bag and decide your exit route when the violence occurs, and identify rescue persons that you can call and so as to ensure that then the victim begins to think about safety as staying with the abuser. So those are the measures that we are actually introducing in that regard. Now, moving to another question that talks then to child maintenance, I would like
Advocate, we've got a limited time. Members want to go to their house and we still have a lot of questions. Can you please wrap up?
Okay, thank you. Now, with the maintenance question, what I can say is that we have set standards for, we introduced what we call the Rapid Result Initiative, so as to cut down the turnaround time in the finalization of these cases. And we have also then, we have a system, the integrated case management system, that is actually monitoring then the management of that time, so as to ensure that we speed up then the finalization of the maintenance cases. And then with the sheriffs, there's a pool of sheriffs that got appointed just recently, so as to increase the capacity of the sheriffs. That is what I can say. And now coming, which is the last one now, in terms of the protection orders, as I said, that we have introduced now the online solution for the protection orders, and it is now at an advanced stage in terms of the development. We are now moving into a phase of piloting it, which is just to ensure that then protection orders then are applied online. We are able to provide then the remote services to complainants. So, and also to ensure that then we also have the magistrate that will be on call, and the clerks of the court will be on call, so as to ensure that we don't have this. We also provide services beyond the court hours and also beyond the court days. So that is what it is intended to do. Thank you, Chairperson.
Public Service and Administration.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity. Unfortunately, Deputy Minister had to leave. Chairperson, both the questions asked by Honorable Sharif is matters that we're actually grappling with on an ongoing basis, and very relevant matters. With regards to the first one, the lack of reporting interventions, I can say that the reasons for low reporting are complex and influenced by a web of interrelated factors and so forth. These include things like feelings of shame and humiliation,
Humiliation.
thank you, self-blame, fear, and denial, and all those kind of things. So it's a difficult matter to get people to report. But nonetheless, the DPSA has worked with Global Affairs Canada to assist and to have a project on this. And one of the activities in this project is basically to establish a women's working group to provide a safe and empowering environment for women to voice their various perspectives and shape recommendations to improve the gender responsiveness of policies, programs, systems, awareness, and all that. So that's the one leg of it. And then the other leg, there's another activity that aims at to develop and deliver gender-sensitive training for initiators, for investigators in the cases that's hearing the cases, and presiding officers that's hearing the cases, and labor relations and HR officers and discipline management. So there's a lot of activities on that and the training taking place as well to try and encourage victims to report. With regards to the last question, the letters, like we said, yes, we know that there is no compliance. We're trying to persuade departments through reporting the non-compliance by writing letters to them, escalating it to the EAs as well. And then further on, we also support, like I mentioned, where there's difficulties and we see departments with difficulties, we support them from the DPSA side and see how we can assist them to actually fulfill the requirements. And then I think the matter raised by Honorable Sharif about including it into the performance agreements is something that we also can look into. Chair, Honorable Chair, that was basically the questions for the DPSA. So I would love to just give an opportunity, with your permission, Chair, my two colleagues, if they would like to add something to that, I would like to give them that opportunity if possible. Thank you.
They will add if we still have time. Let me proceed to cooperative governance.
Mindsets, and I think again we can make plans or resources.
Cooperative governance.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. I think the essence and the more issue was on the lining up and ensuring that we deal with the uniformity, but also we ensure a strategic alignment of municipalities with regards to the services. Both Mama Lula and the DG, my video.
Oh, yes.
Okay, Chair, I'll do that. Thank you, Chair. Mama Lulek and the DG did explain the process of the development in line with the NSP, flowing into the district development model right up to the ward level. But key what the department has been able to assist us will be to develop the key indicators of what needs to be included and monitored in each and every municipality. In the rollout coming is what then the department COCTA is dealing with municipalities in terms of training, the capacity building of the previous councillors whom we've already had. Hopefully we will receive some of that to retain into the new term, but from an induction level, which has been prepared by COCTA in terms of integration of new councillors into this new system, what councillors into the new system or the term of local government, in indicating and putting up those indicators to ensure that it's systematic, it's institutionalized, and it can be monitored. I think the next meeting, Chair, what we could provide, because we're using a district development model, which says the 44 plus 8 municipalities, metros, to make a 52 should be the ones which are aligned with their local municipalities to ensure that it is embedded down. Municipality A may not be able to afford, but the district may have to take responsibility to ensure that all the gender focal points activities are streamlined and we ensure deliver. I think, let me end the Chair, but I think in the next meeting, all those 52 plans will then be summarized, taken through right up to the ward level to allow both the team here and the monitoring and evaluation to be able to contextualize and also monitor what the municipalities will be doing with regard to this. It was a great presentation from other departments. I've learned a lot as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DM. Labour. DM.
Thank you, Chair.
there?
I'm here, Chair. I am sure you can see me. Thank you so much, Chair. I think that we had only 2 questions. I think that relates to LGBTQIA plus rights, and the other one was talking to the budget of our department in terms of the inspectorate. But safe to say, Honorable Chair, that in our presentation, that question is actually answered by Section 6, subsection 1 of the Employment Equity Act states that no person may unfairly be discriminated, no person may unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against an employee in any employment policy or practice on one or more grounds, including race, gender, sex, pregnancy, marital status, family responsibility, ethnic or social origin, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, HIV status, conscience, belief, political opinion, culture, language, birth, or on any other arbitrary ground. That's what covers that, especially when you talk about LGBTIA+. So I think it covers sufficiently that one. So in this instance, Chair, we also are expecting our unions, our labor organizations, organized labor, and all forums that operate in the sector to educate and sensitize our people about their rights. Because now they want to make it our responsibility as the department, and we don't have that capacity. So there must be that shop floor, shop stewards, people who are activists there in every shop floor, so that they can be able to mitigate on these rights of our people. So on issues of budget and the inspectorate, Chair, we have increased our capacity by 500 more inspectors recently, as recent as last year, December, and they were all trained and in various that are enforcing all our labor laws across the labor market, both private, public, and both in the informal sector also. And this is not enough, as we normally say, that it cannot be enough. The number is too little as per what we need to do, the work at hand. So these inspectors, Chair, are overwhelmed with work, and the budget is not sufficient. As always, you know, the budget cuts are also an impediment. We need, as I've said, we need workplace activists now to assist our workers at the shop floor. So all employees should be activists and support all those who experience harassment. And our Commission on Employment Equity is creating awareness and working with organized labor to educate the employees. And you are aware that the CCMA has also had a budget cut, and this has also impacted negatively on its ability to deliver on the mandate of hearing harassment cases. So most of the cases that would necessarily be heard at CCMA level cannot be heard because of the budget cuts. And CCMA also has a program where it does outreach even up to rural areas, but they have not been able to do so because of the challenges that we have. But as I said earlier on, Chair, we've got Metabea Kambule, who is also the chairperson of the Employment Equity Commission on Employment Equity. If there's any other further clarity seeking questions, you can allow her to give feedback on such. Thank you.
DM Communications.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. There was only one question for us, and it was a question of the programs that are aired on television, specifically on SABC, that are seen to be what are the value add for those programs. Firstly, let me say upfront that we do not necessarily get involved in the editorial of the SABC, and we know that SABC is about educating and also about exposing whatever that is there, and anything on the happenings. But however, having said that, we have got FPB that is responsible, and they have an awareness campaign on the issue of classification. So all I can ask is that maybe to appeal to members also here to assist us and support the FPB and the department in terms of the classification. But also I must say that SABC will not go ahead and add something that is not in line with the classification guidelines of the FPB. But the question and the comment is noted, and I will be able to take it forward. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manzini. But I've seen something on your background. I don't know whether it's an advertisement or what. Us as honorable members, we can only put our parliament or our faces, but I don't know with the department, but it's a matter to be discussed next time. Dr. Dlamini.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and the other honorable members. I'll start with the question from Honorable Koza, who was concerned about the first RFP having been missed maybe by some potential applicants, especially those from the rural areas. I don't deny that that is possible, though it was out for 4 weeks, though we went on a road show. It is possible that it might have been missed, but even if you actually wait a year, you'll always get those people that get missed. Having said that, though, the fund being as small as it is currently, it will be a drop in the ocean, whatever we disperse in October. As indicated earlier on, it is our hope that once we start to have an activity and once we claim an impact, we will attract more funding and there will be other RFPs. In terms of provinces, we are very sensitive to provinces, a widespread allocation, especially because more often than not, the centers of the economy, Gauteng, Western Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal tend to get the lion's share of anything, not everything, but a lot of things. So we are mindful of other areas like the Limbopos and many other provinces that might have a need that is unsatisfied. We will take all that into our account, assisted by the research that I indicated was done, I think, by the genetics group, paid for by the Melinda Gates Foundation on behalf of Solidarity. In terms of the question from Honorable Sharif, in terms of the relationship between the fund and the Department of Women, People with Disabilities and Youth, I think the DG has spoken to that. What I do want to say, though, is that while we have about 13 or 14 board members, we have standing invites for the Department of Women, People with Disabilities and Youth for the presidency. And I'm happy to say, and also IWFSA, which was the facilitator of the launch of the fund, I am happy to say that DDG Shoki Chabalala supports us. She comes to most of the meetings. So we actually have a support when it comes to that department and the Department of the Presidency. In terms of the question that was raised by Honorable Mutambi, yes, I think I have answered you, Honorable Mutambi, while I answered Honorable Koza in terms of geography. And when it comes to indirect programming, I hope I understood you well. This is not within our control to some extent. If you take the case of Ford Foundation, who came and said, we will allocate 15 million rand to programs that focus on gender-based violence and femicide, we will have a collaboration agreement with you. It will serve the purpose in the area of our interest, but they actually have to report to their own head office to say, you were allocated funds for gender-based violence and femicide. What did you do? So in those instances, we tend to find each other to say, if we do have a say, how big a say do we have? But when someone is holding the purse, obviously we all know how much control you have if you're sitting across the table and the purse is not in your hand. So, but we still appreciate that, because over and above soliciting financial and non-financial resources in the aim of eradicating gender-based violence and femicide and having partnerships across the board, one of our main aims is to sensitize and galvanize every human being in the country in whatever shape or form, whether it's social cohesion and or putting something in the kitty to assist with the cause. That's what we want to do. I hope I've addressed all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini. And thank you very much to all honorable members and the department. I would like to release the department for now. And for the caucus to talk about the program which is left before we go and attend our sitting for now. Thank you very much, everyone who participated in today's meeting.
Should we leave, Chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, honorable members.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Honorable members, we are left with one item in our agenda. So I just want to check with you whether it will be appropriate to tackle that last item, or we shift it for another day. The role of the Multi-Party Women Caucus in giving effect to the Women's Charter for accelerated development. Do we proceed or?
Chair, it's Honorable Sharif.
Honorable Sharif.
Chair, perhaps we can look at deferring it, because we would want to spend some time going through it and understanding and maybe making additions or subtractions. And so if we do it in 5-10 minutes, it might be rushed. Chairperson, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sharif. Any seconder or any different view?
I support the proposal, Chairperson. My name is Faith Mutambi.
That is supported it. Honorable members, therefore we had to defer the item, and we have some few minutes before we attend our sitting. And thank you very much, honorable members, for attending the caucus. If we're not here, we're not supposed to have a fruitful and vibrant caucus, but because of you being here, I think we managed to have our caucus, and it was well attended and well articulated too. So thank you very much, honorable members. See you at 14 hours.
Long live the chair. Well done, Chairperson. Long live! Long live the chair!
I'm so tired.
Long live chair. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I can imagine.
Recording stop.
Tired.
I'm
tired.
I can. So mitira kahle banan.
We can see ile man Judy.
Eso.
Mitlaiseka.
We can start.
We can sing over.
Bye, Chair.
Bye-bye, Mama.
Bye.
Tati.
Bye-bye.
Can you also teach us? Can you also teach us so that we are able to?
Tati.
Bye
Hey, Kate.
Bye, Chairperson. Bye,
Yes,
Chairperson.
we come in.